you all hit speaker view, that should show up.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is,
Yep.
Yeah.
that
Okay,
is what I'm
perfect. So we can control what people are seeing as their speaker, and so we'll shift that accordingly.
Okay.
perfect.
Mhm.
And Barbara, I'll be introducing Daryl, and I'll mention that you're here to help with the festivities, and then the ball will be in your court before you hand it to Daryl. All right?
Okay,
Okay.
I go away until you.
Okay, so you can grab the award or whatever, and I guess consider me here.
I'm trying to set up our website and the YouTube situation.
Do we
Yeah, we're
realize there may be
currently
a small
live.
percentage of people that are navigating through the website, and so we want to make sure that that information is there for them.
Yeah, I've never
You can sit right there if you want.
edited the website before.
Do you have access to it?
Maybe
I can call Daniel if you want.
that would be great.
Okay, let me just grab my phone.
I think it doesn't even matter over there, just walk over, you know.
Hey, Isaac,
Yeah.
Okay.
would you like to field questions from the chat thing for the Q&A session? You're very good at that.
Sure, I'd be happy to be on chat monitoring duty.
So Daryl, I think I told Leah that I would sort of be the MC during the Q&A, but I'm going to pass that off to Isaac. So when you're done with your address, we'll collectively thank you, and then Isaac will field send some questions your way. All right?
Okay.
And Isaac, and Alex, I want to make sure this is okay. I plan to mention the Humanism Initiative in my opening remarks,
Sounds good.
and I want to put an email address in the chat so that people can contact me about the initiative in the aftermath if they like. So
Yeah, we're going to be putting a bunch of links in the chat as well, so it'll fit right in.
okay, thanks.
Okay.
This is all currently being streamed on YouTube.
Yeah, I just launched that.
All right.
We could turn that off.
I wanted to put the link to the YouTube stream on the web page, so I had to generate the.
There may be
Make
some
this-
people who are expecting to watch it on YouTube. If so, we should leave it.
Yeah, we haven't given them a way to do so yet, which I'm currently trying to edit into our webpage live. We'll see how well that
Well,
works.
it's all over. I'll turn on the lights. You can do it.
Daryl, we appreciate your patience while we
Oh, my pleasure.
take care of all the little things here.
Um,
I got to tell you, Daryl, I'm really excited about this, and think you've got a marvelous story to tell, and I can't wait to share it with our community.
Oh, thank you.
Alex, you want to go through the checklist we made to make sure everything's working?
Yeah, can I just get one brief second? Currently updating, actually. I forgot that I hadn't changed the thing to say 2020.
Of course.
Oh, that looks wonderful. I think I just did it. Okay, we're good.
Good job. Okay, so how about
Do
you
some
share
Photoshop
that,
magic
and I'll
quickly.
start admitting people from the waiting room?
Yeah, well, okay, let me share that before I, just give me 1 second. Let me put this back into the PowerPoint.
Yep.
Because this is not Sagan Fest 2019. This is Sagan Fest 2020.
Quick question for Isaac.
Mhm.
Isaac, did you get the copy of my remarks?
I did. Yeah.
I just want there's a
Link is
paragraph.
good. Mhm.
There's a paragraph there that I can excise if it's
I mean,
redundant with stuff
so
you say.
I'm going to describe the Humanist League. I'm going to describe our meetings, and I'm going to describe our sponsors for
Perfect.
the events, basically.
And then I'll probably skip that part of my remarks then, just to
Cool.
avoid duplication.
Remember, you're going to have to repost that link you just posted because people who join after the chat goes up can't see the old chat.
People who join after the,
Anybody who enters a room after a chat message is sent can't see that chat message.
okay, I'll re-enter it. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
It may be best to do that once we actually have more people here.
Yeah,
Like
it's a
we
good.
could time that out so that right when we're about to start, we put that in.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Because
Good.
otherwise you'll have a lot of people who see it twice and you'll have some people that see it once and it'll look like badgering them.
Ah, yes.
Okay, Isaac, I can share my screen. How's the website thing going?
Editing it as we speak.
So hopefully all of you should be able to see this. And it should be cycling through. I'll have to fix it if it's not. There you go. Okay.
Ooh, fancy.
Yes, very fancy. PowerPoint
Nice.
magic.
All right. Does that mean we're good to start admitting people?
Sounds good to me.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, hold on. Do we want to? What time is it?
It's getting close to 5. You usually admit people before the talk starts.
Works
So
for me.
I have 4:51. Is that
Yeah, same here.
you guys are? Hey guys, let's do this. Let's not wait too many minutes after 5. Let's try to start. I think if some people come in after our opening,
Then
after
that's fine,
Williams,
yeah.
that's fine. But let's respect people's time and get going right at say 5:02 or something.
Okay. Well, I'll admit the first set of people. Hello, everybody. Just so you're not concerned, we don't have audio on for most participants.
So I was just given a chance to admit someone. Is that because I'm co-host?
Yes, it is. I guess we could have people unmuted until the event starts.
Yeah. We usually talk around with people before the event starts, right?
Works for me.
Okay, so yeah, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself, introduce yourself, say hi.
Welcome everyone.
Oh, someone's still connecting.
To Hey, there's Mark Zajacek. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Andrew. How you doing?
It's good to see you again.
You too.
I have been in a better mood the last several days than I have in a long time, but I won't disclose why.
I can guess. I think there's a lot of people in that same boat.
Probably because of the vaccine.
Yeah, that's it.
There's Bill Hellwig. Hi, Bill.
Say it again. I've gotten one.
So Daryl, just checking.
Yeah.
About about half of your face is in the screen and the rest, but that's intentional, right? Because you're planning to stand?
Yeah, I understand, absolutely.
Perfect. All right.
Huh? I'm gonna do my best. Yeah, let me know right before you open up and I'll move this stool out of the way and I'll stand up.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you'll know. You'll know when you're on. I think Barbara will be your cue.
I mean, do you want me on screen before you introduce me or off?
Either way, whatever you're comfortable with is fine.
Okay.
I think on screen is okay.
Huh?
I think on screen is okay. You don't have to stand out of the frame just until we introduce you. I think it's okay for people to see you.
Okay, well, I tell you what, I'm fighting a kidney stone, so I'm gonna sit
Oh,
over
no.
here, and then when you guys are ready, I'll stand up and walk right on the screen.
Okay.
Fair enough.
All right.
Pardon? Music.
Oh, let's start recording, I guess.
Yeah. They want me to address who is my story and my process, having difficult conversations.
So Alex, did you do the slide?
Yes,
Nicely done.
it was a template. Can't lie.
Good template choice, though.
Thank you. You can thank Bill Gates for that. For those just coming in, we're getting started as close to 5 as we can.
Looks like we're getting a good crowd. This is terrific.
And a lot of these people are on time.
Mhm.
Crazy.
What's the world coming to?
Everyone's just happy and on top of things recently, I guess,
Welcome, everybody.
because of the vaccine.
And I can't believe everyone's so happy that Trebek died.
Wow, that was morbid.
In other humanist-related unfortunate passings, James Randi recently.
Really?
The amazing Randy.
Really.
Last month.
I had no idea.
He's a real icon of the free thought movement. co-sponsors, the Pittsburgh Free Thought Community, had James Randi come speak to us a few years back at the Science Center. He put on a short magic demonstration, and he was terrific.
It feels very much like Matt Dillahunty.
I haven't heard Dillahunty speak, but I hear good things.
I know he incorporates. He used to be some kind of magician. And incorporates this into his talks. I haven't seen that many of them, but I remember this being a pretty notable difference between him and other people that speak about similar topics.
There's some really interesting connections between humanist free thought and sleight of hand magic.
Hello, Andy.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Andy.
Hey, Lee. Hey, guys. Guys, say hi to Lee McIntyre there. Hey, guys.
Oh,
Excuse me.
great to have you.
Hello?
Good to see you.
Absolutely.
For those of you who don't know, Lee joined us as a guest and as one of our speakers. Was it last semester or the one before?
I've done a couple of them. I can't remember, but the last one, you know, the pandemic. My time is all screwed up. It could have been last year. It could have been 2 years. I don't know. It all feels like one long day since then.
Sure.
I think I remember you came in 2017 and then you came again in like 2020, I want to say.
I think it was fall of 2019 when I gave my talk on how to talk to the science denier.
Yeah, that was a memorable talk. The
Oh,
flat
good.
Earth, the flat Earth.
Yeah, the flat Earth.
Society,
That's it.
And can you find a flight that goes over Australia and things like that?
Yeah.
Hey, Lee, don't you have a book coming out on that topic?
I do. I've got a book coming out in 2021 called How to Talk to a Science Denier, and it's based on my talk with you guys at CMU.
Fantastic.
All right,
So,
well, it's about 5:03.
Yeah, maybe time to go.
Yeah, people definitely continue to keep coming in, but for people who are on time, they get the full experience.
All right. 62.
All right. William, do you want to start things off?
All right, let's get it started. Welcome, everyone. Come to the 2020 Carl Sagan Fest. Today's event will proceed as follows. After our introductory remarks, Mr. Daryl Davis will have the floor for about 45 minutes. Please remember to keep your microphones off during his seminar. Afterwards, we'll have about 30 minutes for a question and answer session. You can raise your hands in the participants menu of the Zoom call, and we'll unmute you so that you can ask questions. With that out of the way, I'll let Isaac introduce Sagan Day.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Isaac Grossoff. I'm the president of the CMU Humanist League, and I'm here to welcome you all to the Carl Sagan Fest, which is CMU's annual celebration of free inquiry, science, and human values. So I represent the Humanist League. We're a community that meets weekly to discuss important questions in a peaceful and positive way, much as will be reflected in the talk we're going, as closely related to Mr. Davis's approach in the talk we're going to see. We promote dialogue over dogma, so giving reasons, not just opinions. We explore complex issues and work to build common understanding to bridge humanity's differences. So for instance, we've explored divisive questions like, why do people plot revolution? Is abortion moral? Does morality require emotions? And many others that you can see on screen here. And in each case, we've sought to ensure that everybody involved in the conversation comes away with a better understanding of the viewpoints of people with different stances on their questions. We're not trying to achieve everybody believes the same thing at the end of the day. We're trying to better understand each other and have a peaceful interaction. We meet Mondays at 5:30 p.m., currently over Zoom, but once the pandemic is over, in person. And we welcome anyone from the CMU community, but also anyone beyond to join our meetings as long as you bring an open mind. I'll post a link in the chat to sign up for our mailing list if you want to hear about those meetings. Also, 1 or 2 times a semester, we host speaker events like today's event, and I'll post a sign-up link to hear about more of those as well. Now, today's event wouldn't have been possible without our sponsors, which include the Dietrich College of Humanities and Social Sciences, the Dietrich Humanist Initiative, Mr. Lowell Steinbrenner, and the JFC, the Joint Funding Committee, and our event co-sponsors, the Pittsburgh Free Thought Communities. So I want to thank all of them. But now I want to tell you about Sagan Day. So every November, and this is the 8th year we've been doing this, the Humanist League partners with Dietrich College to host a celebration of free inquiry, science, and humane values. We call it Sagan Fest to honor the late Carl Sagan, the astrophysicist who so eloquently promoted a public understanding of science. He was a prolific writer and a dedicated spokesman for critical thinking in science, and his sense of wonder was boundless and his curiosity was unending. He was deeply humane and understood we have to use our empathy and our imagination, as well as our capacity for reason, in order to build a better world. Carl Sagan had this to say on the enormity of space. For such small creatures as we, the vastness is only bearable through love. We hope to carry that spirit throughout our lives here on Earth. And a highlight of our Sagan Fest is the presentation of our annual Carl Sagan Award. Our advisor, Andy Norman, who directs the Humanist Initiative, has more to say about that. Andy?
Thank you, Isaac, and thank you everyone for being here. Isaac mentioned that I direct Carnegie Mellon's Humanism Initiative. The initiative seeks to build community around the values central to science and more generally honest inquiry. For thousands of years, people have built their identities on more or less arbitrary tribal commitments. We now know that this is a bad idea. It breeds dogmatic thinking, tribal conflict, and unnecessary division. We see this playing out, of course, on the national stage today, but we think there's a real alternative, and it involves building communities that celebrate open-mindedness and reason-giving dialogue. Such communities can provide a sense of belonging, and with it, identity options that most people never consider, identities like humanist and freethinker. Here at CMU, we've built a vital student community that supports stable identity formation for a life of purpose and meaning. And if this strikes you as a worthy mission, please do consider supporting the initiative with a year-end tax-deductible gift. You can contact me about that if you're interested on the email address that appears in the chat window. Okay. Isaac has mentioned that we like to honor somebody every year. In 2016, we bestowed the university's inaugural Carl Sagan Prize on Steven Pinker, the eminent Harvard psychologist. A year later, we bestowed it on Richard Dawkins, the renowned evolutionary biologist. In 2018, we recognized the extraordinary work of philosopher Daniel Dennett, and a year after that, Jonathan Haidt, yet another of the world's most eminent thinkers, joined our list of Carl Sagan awardees. This year, we're thrilled to recognize another extraordinary, admirable human being with accomplishments that merit recognition and praise. I'm speaking of Mr. Daryl Davis. Mr. Davis is a courageous artist, a devotee of reasoned dialogue, and a pioneer in the space of race reconciliation. He's an accomplished blues musician who has played with B.B. King, Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Bruce Hornsby. He's a man who's attended Ku Klux Klan rallies, befriended over 20 members of the Klan, and deconverted many dozens of Klansmen. He's the author of the book Clandestine Relationships, A Black Man's Odyssey in the Ku Klux Klan, and the subject of a 2016 documentary titled Accidental Courtesy, Daryl Davis, Race and America. Ladies and gentlemen, our 2020 Carl Sagan Prize reads this way on the plaque. Carnegie Mellon University recognizes Daryl Davis for inspired devotion to dialogue and inquiry, fearless promotion of humane values, and exemplary efforts to improve human welfare. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Ms. Barbara Talley, who will assist me with the presentation of this award. And after that, we'll hear from Mr. Davis. Perhaps you all will join me using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen to give Mr. Davis a hand. Okay. Barbara, you're on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You know, it was in 2005 that I had the privilege of giving Daryl another award, and it was the 2005 Dizzy Gillespie Baha'i Award for Racial Harmony Through the Arts. And so here I am in 2020 with my dear friend to give him this beautiful award from the Carnegie Mellon University's Humanities. Isn't that beautiful?
It is gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. Nobody deserves it more than you, Daryl.
Thank you,
It
Barbara.
is my honor to be here with you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Carnegie Mellon and Andy Norman and everybody there who has selected me. I'm truly humbled, truly honored. I was totally caught off guard when I was contacted about receiving this award, and it really means a great deal to me. You know, this is work that I do on my own because I want to make a contribution, you know, to our society. I believe that our society, our country can only become one of two things. One, it can become that which we sit back and let it become, or two, it can become that which we stand up and make it become. So we all have to ask ourselves the question, do I want to sit back and see what my society becomes, or do I want to stand up and make it become what I want to see? And I've chosen the latter. And that's why I do this work. And it's always nice to be recognized by it. And it's especially nice to be recognized by Carnegie Mellon and to receive the Carl Sagan Award. Because I tell you, you know, as a kid, as a child, I want to be an astronomer as well. And I ended up becoming a musician. And I'll show you how everything becomes full circle. Because the person who inspired me to become a musician in my late teenage years was the man who invented rock and roll music, the late, great Charles Edward Anderson Berry, better known to most people out there as Chuck Berry. He was my hero. He became my friend, and I played piano for him for 32 years. And Carl Sagan himself chose a piece of Chuck Berry's music, the song Johnny Be Good, to put in the Voyager 2 space rocket in the time capsule to be forever up there in orbit in case any aliens ever found the space capsule, they could find out what life was like on Earth. And they heard my mentor's song, Johnny Be Good. So now we're all connected, Chuck Berry, Carl Sagan, and myself. It's come full circle. So thank you all very, very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Okay. You know, I'm 62 years of age, and this started for me a long, long time ago. Let me give you just some of the stepping stones that prepared me to be able to do this type of work. My parents were U.S. Foreign Service, so I spent a lot of years overseas, especially my formative years. You get assigned to a country for 2 years, and then you return home here to the States. You're here for maybe a few months, possibly a year, and then you get assigned back overseas to another country for 2 years, back and forth, back and forth. This started for me at the age of 3 in 1961. And I did some kindergarten over there overseas. I did elementary school, some of my grades, etc. But when I was going to school overseas, my classes were filled with kids from other embassies from all over the world. My classroom looked like a United Nations of little kids. That was the norm for me. That was my first exposure to school, and there were no problems. My classmates were Nigerian, Italian, Russian, French, Japanese, you name it. If they had an embassy there, their kids were there with me. And even though we may not have spoken the same languages or looked alike, we were able to work and play together and have slumber parties. Race was never a question. But when I would return home here after the 2-year assignment, I would either be in all Black schools or Black and white schools. In other words, the still segregated schools or the newly integrated schools. Even though desegregation was passed by the Supreme Court in 1954, It didn't just change overnight. Schools were still segregated in the 60s and some on into the 1970s. But so it always takes time for things to materialize even after laws are passed. So one time coming back, I was the age of 10, 1968, and I ended up in a school in which I was one of 2 Black children in the entire school. Myself in 4th grade and a little Black girl in 2nd grade. Consequently, all of my friends, of course, were 4th and 5th graders, and naturally they were all white. Many of my male friends were members of the Cub Scouts. They invited me to join. I joined, and we had a lot of good times, a lot of fun. We did a march from Lexington, Massachusetts to Concord, Massachusetts, to commemorate the ride of Paul Revere, freedom from the colonial British Empire. Everything was going fine. People were cheering us and all this. I was the only Black Scout participant in this parade. We got to a certain point along the parade route when I began getting hit by bottles, soda pop cans, and rocks and debris from the street by a small group of spectators off to my right. I remember there being a couple of kids, perhaps a year or 2 older than me, I was 10, and a couple of adults who were throwing things. And my first thought was, oh, these people over here on the sidewalk, they don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was. I did not realize that I was the only Scout getting hit until my Scout leaders all came rushing over and covered me with their bodies and escorted me out of the danger. All I could do was ask why. Why are they doing this? I didn't do anything. And all they would do is shush and rush me along without answering my question. When I got home at the end of the parade that day, my mother and father, who were not present, were putting Band-Aids on me and asking me how did I fall down and get all scraped up. I explained to them that I did not fall down and told them exactly what had happened. For the first time in my life, my mom and dad sat me down and explained to me the definition of racism. Believe it or not, at the age of 10, I had never heard the word racism, simply because I did not grow up with it. It was completely foreign to me. And as such, my 10-year-old brain could not wrap itself around the idea that somebody who had never seen me, who never spoke to me and knew absolutely nothing about me would want to hurt me for no other reason than the color of my skin. It simply made no sense. And the people on the sidewalk who were doing this did not look any different to me than my friends overseas, whether they were my little German friends, my Swiss or Australian or French friends, or for that matter, my fellow Americans at the embassy, or for that matter, my classmates right there in Massachusetts. So that is not the reason people were attacking me. And I was convinced that my parents were deceiving me. For the first time in my life, I did not believe what my parents were telling me. Between a month and a half to 2 months later, that same year, 1968, on April the 4th, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And every major city in this country, nearby Boston, my hometown Chicago, where I am right now, Washington, D.C., every major city burned to the ground, all in the name of this new word I had learned a couple of months ago called racism. So now I understood that this phenomenon does exist. However, I did not understand why. Yes, my parents were right. They did not deceive me, but I did not understand why. So for the next 52 years, I've been on a trajectory to find the answer. I formed a question at that age back then in 1968. The question was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And I've been looking for the answer to that question. So as an adult, I became a musician, went to Howard University, graduated with my degree in music, and music is my profession. But understanding race relations has become my obsession. And as such, I wanted the answer to my question that has plagued me since the age of 10. Well, who better to ask that question of than someone who would go so far as to join an organization that has over 100 years of practicing hating people who do not look like them and who do not believe as they believe. So I decided I would go to the Ku Klux Klan. and sit them down and ask them, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? So that has been my journey. Now, to give you some stories about that and how we can apply what I've learned to our daily lives and help mitigate adversity, whether it's racial adversity, gender adversity, socioeconomic, whatever. You have somebody who is an opponent, somebody who disagrees with you. I'm going to tell you how I approached it and what worked for me. When I first contacted the Ku Klux Klan, I had my secretary set up a meeting with the head of the Klan in my area to tell him that I'm writing a book on the Klan. Would he consent to sitting down and giving me an interview? Now, he did not know that I was Black. He agreed to do the interview. I was told not to fool with this guy because this guy would kill me. I got his information from somebody who knew him, who did not want to give me the information. And I was warned repeatedly, do not fool with him. But that was the whole reason I had to fool with him. I want to know why. Why do you have that attitude and you don't even know me? So she called the guy, his name was Mr. Kelly, and Mr. Kelly agreed to meet with me and have the interview, not knowing that I was Black. Well, of course, when he showed up with an armed bodyguard. And as soon as he saw me, his wall went right up because I am the enemy. So when he sees people like me, Black people, Jewish people, gay people, Muslims, interracial people, that radiates hatred, offense, because that is what he does not stand for. That's why he is the head of that particular faction of the Ku Klux Klan. So he showed up, and I did not know what he was going to do when he saw me. He freaked out a little bit, as did the bodyguard. But I invited them into the room. I invited him to have a seat. So he sat down, got over it. The bodyguard stood at attention to his right-hand side. Now, his wall is up because he does not like me. And I asked him, how can you hate me? You don't even know me. This was the answer that I got, and I would hear this answer many times over the next almost 37 years. In 2021, I will have been doing this work for 37 years, and I've heard this answer repeatedly. Well, Mr. Davis, Black people are prone to crime. All you have to do is look at our prison system. There are more Blacks in prison than there are white people. Well, what he is saying is true. There are definitely more Black people in prison than white people. But that is a half-truth because he is not considering the imbalance in our judicial system or the fact that there are plenty of poor white people and poor Black people who may be innocent, who are also in prison because they could not afford adequate legal representation, and they took a plea to something they didn't even do, and there they sit withering away in a prison cell. But one's perspective is one's reality. So if you want to have somebody change something, don't try to change their reality. Their reality is their reality. All you can hope to do is perhaps provide them with a different perspective, and then they will change their reality. So I'm just sitting there listening to all this. And then he tells me that Black people are inherently lazy. We do not want to work. We want to scam the government welfare system. We want all the free handouts that we can get. Now I'm sitting 2 feet away from this guy and listening to this. And he's sitting there with his armed bodyguard standing next to him. And then he goes on to say that Black people are born with a smaller brain than white people. White people have a larger brain, therefore more capacity for intelligence. And he tells me that this is evidenced by the fact that Black students consistently, year after year, score lower on the SATs than white kids. Again, he is speaking truth there. That is true. But it is a half-truth because he is not considering the fact that where do most Black kids go to school? They go to school in the inner city. It is a well-known, documented fact that inner city schools are not as good as the schools in the suburbs. And I can tell you something. the Black kids who go to school in the suburban schools score just as high, if not higher, than some white kids in those schools. And white kids who go to school in the inner city score just as low, if not lower, than some Black kids there. It has nothing to do with skin color or the size of one's brain. It has everything to do with the quality of the educational system in which someone is enrolled. But I don't cut him off, I don't interfere. I allow him to say what he wants to say. Now, why do I do that? Let me back up again. Back to my travels as a child, traveling overseas with my parents, different countries. I lived in Africa for 10 years. I lived in Europe, and I've been to many other countries in between. Today, as a professional musician, I perform all over the world. When you combine my travels as a child with my travels as a musician together, I've been now in a total of 57 different countries on 6 continents. And I can tell you something, no matter how far I have gone from the United States or how close, be it right next door to Canada or Mexico or halfway around the world, and I see people who do not look like me, who do not believe as I believe, I see different cultures, different religions, etc. No matter how big the differences are or how far away I may go, when I return home, I conclude one thing. I conclude that everybody I encountered all over the world are human beings. And as such, we all want basically the same 5 things. We want to be loved. We want to be respected. We want to be heard. We want to be treated fairly. We want the same things for our family as anybody else wants for their family. And if we keep those basic 5 core values in mind and show them to others as we go to their societies, we can navigate pretty much through any society. So I just consider the society of white supremacy just another society, because basically they want those same things, but with a little twist in there of being a supremacist. But it's easy to navigate, easier, I should say, to navigate through that society if you keep those things in mind. Now, the idea is not to convert anybody, not to tell them what to think, but to help them understand how to think. And you plant seeds. You cannot plant a seed when somebody's wall is up. The seed hits the wall and bounces back on your side. When their wall is up, their ears are plugged. They are not hearing you. So I'm showing this man respect. I'm allowing him to be heard. 2 of those 5 things I just mentioned. I'm also treating him fairly. 3 of those 5 things I just mentioned. Now, understand something. I do not, and I did not respect what he had to say, but I respected his right to say it. That's the difference. And in doing so, I'm throwing this man off his game, because usually when he is spewing this vitriol to somebody like me or somebody Jewish or somebody gay or whatever it is he doesn't like, within 30 to 45 seconds, there is pushback and it gets loud. And if it's not controlled, it could even come to physical clashes. I'm just sitting back, listening to him, giving him that respect, allowing him to be heard and treating him fairly. And as such, I'm throwing him off his game. And as I throw him off his game, the wall begins to come down. And I continue listening. Now, let me ask you a question. Is what he is telling me offensive? Of course it's offensive to be told that you're a criminal, you're lazy, and you're unintelligent. Am I offended by this? Absolutely not. And the reason why I'm not offended is because it's not true. The man is speaking an untruth. Why should I be offended by a lie? This man doesn't know me. He just walked into my hotel room 10 minutes ago, and all he sees is this, the color of my skin and he's going to make these assertions. So why should I be offended by somebody who doesn't even know me and is going to pass this kind of judgment on me? If my mother or father were to tell me, well, Daryl, you're kind of prone to crime, and you're very lazy. You don't clean up your room or do anything like that, and you're pretty unintelligent. You're kind of dumb. Maybe I might take that to heart. After all, my parents brought me into this world, and they raised me, but not some guy who just walked in my room 10 minutes ago, and all he sees is my skin color. I'm not going to be offended by a lie. So we have to, number one, understand this. Do not put your emotions in front of you. If you know who you are, then believe it. Don't let somebody else convince you of who you are not. If you don't know who you are, you have no business walking into a room with somebody like that, because they will tell you who you are, and you might believe them. So get your self-esteem together, know who you are before you walk into a room with somebody who may have an opinion that disagrees with yours. You must be willing to listen, to respect that person, to allow him to speak or her to speak, treat them fairly, and give them that platform. So as a result, that wall comes down. And now after he has exhausted all this vitriol and you have given him those things, he feels compelled to reciprocate. So now he's going to listen to you, rebut him or say whatever it is you want to say, because the wall is down. When the wall is down, his earplugs are out or his hearing aids are in. So he's going to hear you now. Now, it's my turn to speak. I could go on the offense and verbally attack him, and I would be well within my right to do so. I could say, hey, no, you are the one who's a criminal. You're the one hanging black men from trees and dragging them behind pickup trucks and bombing their churches and doing all these kinds of things. And I would be absolutely correct. The Ku Klux Klan has a long history of doing just those things and more. But I'm not going to go on that attack, because if I do, that wall goes back up. I want to keep the wall down. So instead of going on the offense, I go on the defense. But my defense is a subtle offense. My seed gets planted across that wall because the wall is down now. I say, I hear what you're saying, but the fact of the matter is, I don't have a criminal record. Nobody in my family has a criminal record. I have a bachelor's degree. My mother and father both had master's degrees. My father was working on his PhD when he passed away. As far as welfare goes, I've never been on welfare. Nobody in my family has been on welfare. As far as my brain size goes, I've never measured my brain, but I'm sure it's the same size as anybody else's. And as far as the SATs go, my SAT scores were good enough to get me into Howard University. Oh, and by the way, we have a new vice president who graduated from Howard University. My SAT scores were good enough to get me into Howard University. And now I have a bachelor's degree. So I'm saying all this defending myself, but he's hearing it. So therefore it is a subtle offense, all right? Because what happens is this, he goes home, and I know this for a fact because I've been doing this for almost 37 years, and I hear it time and time again when these people renounce that ideology and give me their robes and hoods. And what they tell me is this, they thought about some of the things that I had said. When the wall is down, they hear you. They go home and they reflect on it and they think, I just had a 3-hour conversation with a black guy and we didn't fight. Yeah, we disagreed, but we didn't fight. That's never happened before. And what he said about such and such, it made sense, but he's black. But what he said was true, but he's black. So they're having a cognitive dissonance going on. They realize the information I imparted to them was true. Either they know it to be true already, or they've researched it and found it to be true. But what they don't want to accept is it came from a black source. So they struggle with themselves back and forth. That becomes their dilemma. But then finally, when they make up their mind, fortunately, most of the ones I have encountered decide to go with the truth. The question is, do I disregard Daryl Davis's skin color and believe the truth because I know it to be true and change my path? Or do I consider his skin color and continue living a lie? That's the question only they can answer. So fortunately, most of them that I have encountered, well over 200, okay, have renounced that ideology and gone with the truth. There will be those who will go to their grave being hateful, racist, and violent. And there's no changing them. That's the difference between ignorance and stupidity. Now, if I had thrown my education in their face, knowing that I might have more education in my little finger than this guy sitting in front of me and his whole clan group put together, that would have offended him and the wall would have gone right back up. So what we do is you don't defend yourself by offending someone else. That does not work. Defend yourself to defend yourself and let them hear that. And then they will ponder that. That's how you get through to people. Now, while we were in that room, sitting at this table talking, I had a bag beside me and I was recording our conversations, our interview on a cassette recorder. So I had blank cassettes in my bag and the cassette recorder was sitting in the middle of the table. Every time the tape ran out, I would reach down to my bag and pull out a fresh cassette to replace it. Every time I reached down, the bodyguard would reach up to his hip and put his hand on the butt of his gun. Now I understood that, that's his job. I'm the enemy. I have a bag beside me that he cannot see inside. So he has no idea what's in the bag. Is there a threat there, whatever? He is doing his job. I got that. So it didn't bother me. But after almost an hour, he realized there was no threat in the bag. And he relaxed. I went in and out of the bag. He didn't move. He didn't move. Well, a little over an hour into this interview, Mr. Kelly and I were talking, and out of nowhere, there was a very short, quick noise, like a ch. That was it. Just that short, that fast. Ch. That was it. And we all in the room jumped. I flew out of my chair and hit the table because I was getting ready to come across that table. I knew that Mr. Kelly had made this noise. And because, now how did I know that? Well, obviously because I didn't do it. So if I didn't do it, I'm gonna blame somebody else, right? So I'm gonna blame him. He's a Klansman, he's my enemy. I'm a black guy, I'm his enemy, all right? So I'm gonna blame him. When you hear a noise that you don't understand, and it came out of nowhere, you perceive it to be an ominous, threatening noise because there was no reason for it to happen. And you fear for your life. When you fear for your life, you go into what's called survival mode. You will do one of four things when you are in survival mode. Some people just pass out, they faint, they fall out because the fear is so great, their brain cannot process it. And they faint. I don't do that. Other people, their muscles will tighten up and constrict and they can't move, they're frozen. That is called paralysis by fear. You've seen people maybe in a fight and they curl up into a ball and you can be kicking them and punching them and they're not even deflecting the blows. That's because they have constricted and they can't move. Paralysis by fear. I don't do that either. The third thing people will do is to run away. Run away from the fear. That is your best option. And that is the option that I would have chosen had it been available to me. But there's no outrunning a bullet in a motel room. I was not armed. My secretary was not armed. The only person that I knew for sure who was armed was the bodyguard. I could see his weapon in his holster on his hip, and he had his hand on the handle. He had not drawn it, but he had his hand on the handle. I did not know whether Mr. Kelly, sitting in front of me in a suit and tie, had a weapon up under his suit jacket or not. All I knew was I was not armed, my secretary was not armed, and now my life is in danger. This is the head of the Klan, I'm a black guy. The person who knew him told me, don't fool with him, he'll kill you. So I got all this going on in my head, and I did not want to die that day. So the fourth option is to do what's called a preemptive strike. Get them before they get you. And that's why I had flown out of my chair and I was preparing to dive across the table, grab the bodyguard, grab Mr. Kelly, and slam them down to the ground and disarm the bodyguard, just to neutralize the situation, immobilize them. When I hit the table, I'm looking right into Mr. Kelly's eyes, and I did not say one word. My eyes were speaking loud and clear. In fact, my eyes were shouting so loud, he could hear my eyes. They were saying to him, "What did you just do?" Well, his eyes had locked with my eyes, and he didn't say a word either. But I could read his eyes like telepathy. His eyes were saying to me, "What did you just do?" And the bodyguard had his hand on his gun, looking back and forth between both of us like, "What did either one of y'all just do?" Well, Mary, my secretary, she was sitting on top of the dresser in this motel room because there were no more chairs. She realized what had happened, and she began explaining it to us when it happened again. What had happened was, before they even arrived, Mary and I had gotten some soda pop out of the soda machine down the hall in the vending area, and got a bunch of sodas and put them in the ice bucket with the ice to be able to offer Mr. Kelly a cold beverage when he arrived. You know, I did not know what this man was going to do, but if he came into the room, I wanted to be hospitable and offer him a cold beverage. So during our conversation, we had forgotten about that. And the ice in the ice bucket had begun melting, and the cans of soda shifted down the ice. That was it. That was the only thing making the noise. Somebody almost got shot over an ice cube. That's how ridiculous that is. But I won't say that moment was a learning moment. The learning will come later, but that moment was definitely a teaching moment. And the lesson learned is this: all because some foreign, underscore, highlight, circle the word foreign, entity of which we were ignorant, that being the bucket of ice cans of soda, had entered into our little comfort zone at the table where we were talking via the noise that it made, we all became fearful of one another. The lesson taught is this: ignorance breeds fear. We fear those things of which we don't know, of which we are ignorant. If we do not keep that fear in check, that fear escalates into accusatory blame, which is exactly what was happening. I'm blaming him, he's blaming me for making the noise. It escalates into accusatory and then into hatred, because we hate the things that frighten us. If we do not keep that hatred in check, that in turn escalates into anger and destruction. Ignorance breeds fear, fear breeds hatred, hatred breeds destruction. We almost saw that whole chain unravel to completion. Fortunately, it stopped just short of the last component, destruction. Had the bodyguard put out his gun and shot somebody, namely me or my secretary doing his job, or had I pounced across the table and hurt one of them doing my job, which is to preserve my life and preserve the life of my secretary. So fortunately, it stopped short of that. And we all began laughing as my secretary was explaining it, and it happened again. In that moment where we all were laughing, where we all are enemies, but laughing at a common thing, how ignorant we truly were, that humanized us. In that moment, we all felt the very same thing. We each had felt fear a moment ago, but then when the fear was due to our ignorance, but when our ignorance was alleviated with the explanation, we all rejoiced in being safe, and we all laughed together. That humanized a Black man and a Klansman in the same moment, okay? Now, like I said, I'm glad it stopped short of that last component. However, each person out there watching this Zoom virtual presentation, you all saw the chain that I'm talking about: ignorance, fear, hatred, destruction. You all saw that unravel to full completion. 3 years ago, on August 12th, 2017, in Charlottesville, Virginia, at the big white supremacist rally there. On that day, August 12th, 2017, there was a lot of ignorance in Charlottesville. And that caused a lot of fear in Charlottesville. When that wasn't mitigated, it escalated to a lot of hatred in Charlottesville. And what did that culminate in? It culminated in destruction when a white supremacist got inside his vehicle and attempted to murder as many counter-protesters as he could by driving full force into the crowd. He succeeded in injuring 20 people and murdering one young lady named Heather Heyer that day. Ignorance breeds fear, fear breeds hatred, hatred breeds destruction. So, if you want to solve this problem of racism, there are many different ways to do it. But so far, we haven't been doing very well. And racism has many facets to it. And each facet has to be addressed a certain way. There are certain things that you do top down. You know, it's like a corporate structure or a department, like say a police department. You know, if people at the top are tight, the subordinates down below, they will be tight. If the management at the top is loose, you can expect people down below to be loose. So people take their cues from the top. But you cannot tighten the top in this particular situation with racism. It has to be a bottom-up approach. You can do that with the systemic portion of racism, but when you're dealing with individuals, you must do it from the bottom up. And let me explain that to you. Forget about the top level destruction. That is a symptom. Once something is destroyed, it is not coming back. The next level down is the hatred. Again, another symptom. Forget about it. It's not worth pursuing. Next level down, fear, another symptom. Don't address it. Forget about it. Go to the bottom. That's the source, the nucleus of everything. And that is ignorance. If you fix the ignorance, then there's nothing to fear. With nothing to fear, there's nothing to hate. With nothing to hate, there's nothing to become angry about and destroy. The good thing is there is a cure for ignorance. That cure is called education and exposure. You provide somebody or a group or whatever with that education, you give them that exposure, then they're no longer ignorant. And therefore, all those symptoms don't even come into being. That's how it works. And as I told you before, when these people go home and they reflect upon these things, that is what happens. It may not happen overnight. It may not happen over a few weeks. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it takes years. And then when they renounce that belief and I end up with their robes and hoods, I'm telling you, it's because of those conversations. A missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting, they're talking. They may even be disagreeing, but at least they're talking. It's when the conversation ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you want to keep the conversation going. And that's how we solve things. I go to extremes. I'm a Black man going to KKK rallies and sitting down with the Klan and all this kind of stuff. I've been doing it for a long time. If I can achieve that, certainly it should be a lot easier for people to sit down at their own dinner table and have conversations, regardless of whether your sister or your brother voted for this candidate and you voted for that candidate. I've heard way too many stories, folks, about friends and families breaking up over political candidates. That is absolutely ridiculous. Do not put your emotions in front of you. Listen to the other person. Try to understand why they feel that way. Do not try to change their reality. Their reality is based upon their perspective. Only they can change their reality. But what you can do in the meantime is offer them another perspective. But you will not be able to offer them that perspective if they have their ears plugged up and their wall is up. Bring their wall down by showing them respect, allowing them to be heard, treating them fairly. We start off, let's take race off the table. There are many hot topics out there: abortion, nuclear weapons, global warming, the war in the Middle East, the current election. Okay, you're on this side, somebody else is on this side. Your adversaries. Talk, have that conversation, show that respect, allow each other to be heard, regardless of whether you agree or not. And as you do that, you will find if you spend 5 minutes with your biggest adversary or your worst enemy, you will find you have something in common. You spend 10 minutes, you find even more in common, and that gap is closing. Now you've gone from adversary to some kind of a relationship. You're not best friends, but you have a relationship. And you keep on talking, you're finding more in common. And that gap is narrowing even more. And now you're heading towards a friendship, a respectable friendship. You may disagree, but at least you're on friendly terms. And when you reach this point, you end up having more in common than you do in contrast. And the trivial things that you have in contrast, such as skin color, or whether you go to a mosque, a temple, a church, or a synagogue, begin to matter less and less. So before you guys go home tonight, ask yourselves that question. Do I want to sit back and see what my society becomes, or do I want to stand up and make it become what I want to see? Only you can answer that question, and as an individual, you can affect a lot of other people. Thank you all very much, and I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that talk. Yeah, so now we have some time for a question and answer. The way we're going to field questions is using the participants menu, which you can get to by clicking the participants on the bottom of the Zoom call. You can click the raise hand button. And when you do that, I'll see it, I'll unmute you, and you can ask your question. So so while people are thinking of their questions, maybe I could start with a question for you, Mr. Davis. The examples you gave, the sort of information that sort of caused this internal conflict in people, in the person you were talking to, was information that's sort of easy for you to demonstrate, right? Like, you could demonstrate, I've never been to jail, I have a bachelor's degree, and so on. And that set up that internal conflict in somebody. I guess I'm wondering if someone's beliefs are about something that's hard to sort of provide evidence like this on. So, people saying the war in the Middle East was a good idea or a bad idea. What sort of contrast can you set up that might have the potential to have that?
Well, what I try to do is differentiate. Everybody's entitled to facts. Everybody's entitled to opinions, but not all opinions are facts. So I respect somebody voicing their opinions, but if their opinions are not factual, then it's up to me to provide those facts. And, I have done a lot more traveling than most of the people that I encounter in the white supremacy movement. That does not make me a better human being by any means, but it gives me a broader perspective. And one of my favorite quotes is by Mark Twain, and it's called the travel quote. And Mark Twain said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." And that is so true. And that has been my experience. I can tell you right now, perhaps had I grown up here in my own country my whole life and never had all this exposure as a kid that my parents, gave to me because of my dad's job, Would I be doing this work with white supremacists? Would I be going to Klan rallies? Probably not. Probably not. But all that exposure has given me, ammunition to be able to navigate things like that. So all I can do is share that vicariously with people who may not ever get out of their own neighborhood. I live right here. I live right outside of Washington, D.C. To drive from my house down to the Washington Monument on a non-rush hour day would take maybe 25, 30 minutes. I know people who live all their lives 15 minutes on the other side of me and have never even been down to the monument. Americans, we don't travel that much. Europeans travel all the time. We don't travel that much. And according to the Census Bureau, less than 50% of us even have passports. So, we have to get out of our bubbles and out of our echo chambers. This is our country. We need to explore it. Every city in this country belongs to all of us, regardless of where we live. If you live in New York City, Los Angeles is still your city. It's an American city and you're an American. Get out there and explore your country, explore your state, explore your neighborhood. That's what we need to do. And I try to share these things vicariously with people and encourage them. And it starts to work. It doesn't work with everybody, but many it does.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe for our next question, we could have Lee McIntyre. You should be able to unmute now.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Hi, Lee.
Hi, Mr. Davis. I have such great respect for your work. I saw your interview on Amanpour and Company.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a philosopher, and I deal with science deniers. I deal with flat earthers, climate change deniers, anti-vax, anti-COVID people. These are the folks that I'm talking to on a daily basis. I've come to some of the same conclusions that you've come to talking about race in my own work talking with science deniers. And your work's very inspiring because if you can do what you do with Klansmen, I feel like I should be able to make more progress in talking to climate deniers and flat earthers. But here's an issue that I wanted to get your advice on. In November 2018, I went to a flat earth convention, and respect, empathy, listening, all of the things that you described. I was not able to make a dent, and it led me to worry about the following. I believe what you say when you say that the entree is ignorance. If you can overcome, if you can get somebody to trust you, if you can get the wall to come down, treat them as a human being, they'll begin to listen, and maybe you'll be able to make headway. What I've discovered in talking with science deniers is that it's not always ignorance. Sometimes it's willful ignorance. Sometimes they know that what they believe is not true, but they assert it anyway because they're benefiting by it. In the case of climate change, it's easy to see because sometimes there's a political benefit or a financial benefit. The people who are creating the disinformation, the people, you can think about the people who create the disinformation and then the audience for the disinformation. Maybe you'll get to the audience. How do you get to the problem of the willful ignorance, the people who are creating the disinformation, the people who are creating the incentive structure for all of the ignorance to breed so that, we have this tremendous problem. My selfish interest is in science denial. How do I reach all of the climate deniers in America who are believing the things that are created by the willfully ignorant people at ExxonMobil and the dark money think tanks who are benefiting from this? I feel like that in some ways is the source. Otherwise, I'm just perpetually trying to convert people one by one. And as I said, I haven't had much luck in doing that because you're very skilled at it. It's very hard to do what you do. I'm not as skilled at it. But I wonder if you could address the question of willful ignorance.
Sure. There is willful ignorance, and sometimes I even compare that to stupidity. There are people who are opportunists, and I think these are the people that you're speaking of as being willfully ignorant. Perhaps some of their followers as well, but because they are going to self-enrich, they're going to benefit by exploiting others, having them believe a certain thing helps them to be enriched. And that's where you have to have the followers, because we have that in Black leadership, we have that in white leadership. I know white supremacists who know they're wrong, but yet they make money. They have power because they have a following, and they benefit from that. So yes, that is conniving. I think willful ignorance is very polite, but the followers who buy into that, those are the ones that you need to first approach. And I think people are wired to make their decisions either based upon logic or based upon emotion. And we each have both of those capacities within us. But we're either geared more one way or geared more the other way. It's sort of like, we're either right-handed or left-handed, but then there are a few of us who are ambidextrous, right? And when you appeal to somebody who makes their decisions upon emotion, there is no way in heck you're ever going to persuade them by giving them data and logic. They're not logic-driven. You have to appeal to their emotions. So you have to give them examples of something on an emotional level. If somebody, you're a scientist, so you deal with logic, you deal with data, you deal with the facts and statistics. And so nobody is going to sway you one way or the other if they tell you about how they feel. How they feel is irrelevant if it doesn't show in the data. All right, so because you're logic driven. I'll give you an example of something. I had this Klansman in my car one day. He was considered what's called an exalted cyclops, a district leader. And we were riding around, and he's in the passenger seat, I'm driving, and somehow or another we got on the topic of Black crime. And he made the statement that I'd heard before from different Klan people. He says that all Black people have a gene in them that makes them violent. And I said, well, how do you figure that? He said, well, who's doing all the drive-bys and carjackings in Southeast? He was referring to Southeast Washington, D.C., which was a predominantly Black area, high crime. There's some white people who live there, but it's predominantly Black. I said, okay. I said, it's Black people. I said, but that's what lives there. I said, you're not considering the demographics. Who's doing all the crime in Bangor, Maine? White people, because that's what lives there. And he's like, no, that has nothing to do with it. You all have this gene, that makes you violent. I said, look here. I said, I'm as Black as anybody you've ever seen. I said, I have never done a carjacking or a drive-by. How do you explain that? He did not hesitate 1 second. He answered me like that. He said, your gene is latent. It hasn't come out yet. Now, how do you argue with somebody who is that far out in left field? I couldn't even bite into that and chew on it. And so he's sitting there all smug and secure, like, you see, you got no response. So I thought about it, and I said, okay, well, that's where he's thinking. So I have to go to that level in order to deal with him. So I'm not going to convince him of stats, police reports, or anything else like that. I said to him, okay, well, all white people have a gene within them that makes them a serial killer. He's like, well, how do you figure? I said, name me 3 Black serial killers. He couldn't do it. I named one for him. I said, here, I'm going to give you one. I named one for him. I said, just name me 2. He couldn't do it. I said, Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, Henry Lee Lucas, John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, David Berkowitz, son of Sam, Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler. I said, they're all white. I said, son, you are a serial killer. He said, Daryl, I've never killed anybody. I said, your gene is latent, hasn't come out yet. He goes, well, that's stupid. I said, well, duh. I said, yeah, it is stupid, but it's no more stupid for me to say that about you than what you said about me. And he got very, very quiet. But I could see his wheels just spinning. And then a moment later, he changed the subject. But 5 months later, he quit the Klan based on that conversation. And that was the first Robin Hood I ever got. So sometimes, you have to go where they are, in their mind. Figure out if someone's, if you ask somebody, what do you think about Obama's policy? Or what do you think about what Donald Trump did here, or blah, blah, blah. If they say, well, I think, then they're logic driven. If they say, well, I feel such and such, they're emotion driven. So listen to that kind of answer and go in that direction with them and set up examples. So with the climate change people, you got to go to where they are. The people who are exploiting them, who are trying to self-enrich, that speaks to their greed, that speaks to their desire for power and things like that. But you let the people down who they are, the followers who don't have, they're just following somebody who they admire, something like that. You separate ignorance from stupidity. Unfortunately, a lot of people think ignorance and stupidity are synonymous. I don't. I define it like this. An ignorant person is someone who makes an incorrect decision or a bad choice because he or she does not have the facts or the proper information to make a good choice or a correct decision. If you give that person those facts and proper information, you have alleviated the ignorance and they can make a good choice. A stupid person is someone who has the facts and they still make a bad choice or bad decision. And I give them an example, like, let's say I have a room and I paint the walls in the room and all the walls are wet. And I do not post any signs that say wet paint, stay off the walls. Therefore, anybody coming into the room is ignorant, not in the derogatory sense, but ignorant in the sense of being unaware that these walls are wet. And they might go and lean against the wall and now they got paint on their clothing. So I can fix that by putting up signs saying wet paint, stay off the walls. I can stand in the doorway and tell each person entering the room, hey, gather around the center. I just painted these walls 10 minutes ago, they're still wet. So now everybody has the facts. Everybody has the proper information to make the right decision. But still somebody goes and leans up against the wall and now he wants to know why is there paint on his clothes? It's because he's stupid. So you separate the stupidity from the ignorance, you give them that example, and then you give them the information they need, and don't call them stupid or ignorant, let them make up their own mind. Here's what it shows, you decide what you are.
Thank you for that answer.
Thank you.
I think we got a few people lined up for questions next. I think we're going to do them in the order I saw people's hands or chat messages go up. So next, how about Roshan? Oh, I got to unmute him. Sorry.
Am I unmuted? Okay. Can you hear me, Isaac?
Yes. How are you doing?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Davis. That was an excellent talk. My question is, can you comment on what the responsibility of, if any, of the oppressed community is in like moving towards progress? Like, for example, what might be the responsibility of the Black leaders or the Black community in moving towards like a post-racial United States or something like that?
Yes. What I would encourage is for people to come together and respect the collective voice. We cannot achieve, nobody can achieve anything on their own. We need people from the other side to come together with us, all right? Like, for example, we have always had white people involved in our civil rights movement, starting with Rosa Parks in 1955 and on through the 1960s with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We've always had some white people marching with us and supporting our movements, all right? Not a whole lot, but they were there. And 20 years ago, Barack Obama or any Black person could never have become elected president, because Black people did not put Barack Obama in the White House. White people put Barack Obama in the White House. Black people only make up 12% of the US population. Right now, they say it's about almost 13%. So we really haven't grown. I mean, when I was a kid, it was 12%. All right. So not all 12% of us are eligible to vote, either because we're not old enough, or we're not registered, or we're felons, or whatever. All 12% cannot vote. But even if all 12% of Black people in this country could vote, including newborn babies, that still would not be enough votes to put Barack Obama in the White House. We still needed a mass of white votes to join us to do that. By 2008, there were enough white people who were willing to say, hey, I like that guy's policies, check, he's got my vote. Prior to that, there were not, even though there have been a lot of Black people who were capable of running this country. But the attitude of the majority was not there enough to do it. By 2008, they were. It was that collective voice that got him there. All right, now, back to our protests from the civil rights movement. All right, we've turned a lot of pages. But if you look at the protests today, we are seeing a mass of white people joining us in the streets, marching in the wake of the George Floyd lynching, calling out for equality and racial justice and stop these police killings, et cetera, et cetera. All right, a mass of white people joining us, which we've never seen before. And as a result, there is a larger ripple effect that is taking place in this country that we've never seen before. While the marches and protests in the wake of George Floyd's death were geared predominantly towards police departments, the ripple effect was widespread. You had NASCAR banning the Confederate flag, but had nothing to do with the police, but had everything to do with race. NASCAR, which was ground zero for the Confederate flag, banning the Confederate flag. The state of Mississippi, of all places, removing the Confederate flag out of their main flag body. Food brands like Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben changing their branding. Legislation being written up and passed to remove statues. We've never seen this many changes before occur so quickly. And now police officers who are making these transgressions are being arrested and charged a lot quicker and fired a lot quicker than ever before. Normally, when these things would happen, if they were charged or even accused, well, they were always accused, but if they were charged, it would take months and months and months. And oftentimes they were found, unsustained, and they remain on the force. Today, we're seeing them being fired a lot quicker. What is the difference between the protests today and the protests of the past? It's that collective voice coming together. All Americans, we're seeing whites and Blacks and Hispanics all joining together. And that is what is getting the job done. So going forward, we need to come together, recognize that, and cultivate that. And that's how we will get forward. And that is how we got our current president and vice president elect, with that collective voice. That's where we need to focus our energy.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
For our next question, how about Ricardo? Let me unmute you.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Ricardo.
I have a quick question. So a lot of the way that you are telling us that we should have these conversations is antithetical to the ways that people have conversations, really the way that people are taught to have conversations in this country today, especially with social media, everything else on. Do you have one or two things that if we had to tell somebody else a takeaway to maybe get them to have conversations in the way that you do, as well as train ourselves. I mean, let's be honest, we need to all learn. How do we train ourselves to have these types of conversations? Are there one or two things that we can focus on in the short term to be able to sort of rewire our minds? Thank you.
Yes. You know, you hit the nail on the head. We have to train ourselves how to have these conversations as well, and how to retain our emotions. You know, we spend a lot of time saying, you know what, it's not my job to teach somebody else how to treat me equally. But you know what, it is our job, because we all are Americans, we all are brothers. We may be brothers who don't get along, okay, but we're still brothers. And it's time that we stop saying, I'm not my brother's keeper. Let's say I am my brother's keeper, because I got something that I can share with you, and you got something that you can share with me. And when we accept that and we seek that from one another, it makes us both all the stronger. And that's the attitude that we have to go by. We all have something to give. We all have something to learn. And that's what we need to retrain all ourselves. But if you're not being treated right, and you have not been treated right for 401 years, and you still think it's not your job to tell somebody how to treat you, well, then maybe you don't deserve to be treated right. You know, that's my attitude. You know, I want to be treated right. And so if not telling you isn't changing anything, then I'm going to sit you down and tell you how I want to be treated.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I think somebody posted a question in the chat, but maybe had to leave. Oh, so they don't seem to be in the list of members. So I'm going to read that question for them. So the question is, I believe what you've outlined is the best and most efficient way of fighting racism. Listen to the other side, work to get rid of ignorance, rather than fight the fear that emerges from it. But if we look at the modern identity politics, while it attempts to fight racism, it seems to me it does so in the wrong way, by creating division, by labeling some people as oppressors or some people as victims based on the color of their skin. White equals oppressor, black equals victim. This is in sharp contrast with what you're saying here, and in my opinion, seems to magnify this problem rather than fix it by removing the individual from the conversation and putting people in boxes based on the color of skin. I want to know what you think about that concept.
Okay, I missed part of the question. I couldn't hear you very well.
So to summarize, this person is talking about the concept of identity politics, which to him seems to put people into boxes where, according to maybe their skin color, maybe along the lines of white equals oppressor and black equals victim. And I guess what he's asking is, what do you think about that concept of identity politics?
I think we need to get rid of identity politics, because, you know, we have people who are oppressed who are white. We have people who are oppressors who are black. We have women of both colors, black and white, who are oppressed. You know, in the 21st century, they're still making 79 cents on a man's dollar. So we need to look at people as human beings. And also to Ricardo's point earlier, when we want to talk to these people, let's not frame it as a debate. Yes, we are going to debate certain points, but let's not frame it as a debate. Let's say, listen, let's have a conversation. I want to hear how you feel about this, or what you think about such and such. I want to listen to you. I want to hear from you. Frame it as a conversation, and that way the temperature is kept down. Because if you tell somebody, hey, I want to debate you on this, well then, you know, their guard is up and they're ready to defend and offend and whatever else. So I think, you know, we need to remove identity politics out of it and look at it from a humanistic point of view. What is fair? What is fair regardless of the color or religion?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the next person, KD, do you want to go next? You should be able to unmute.
Hello, Mr. Davis. Thank you so much for your.
Hi, KD.
Thank you so much for your terrific talk. It seems to me that you may agree with Jonathan Swift, who said that we can't reason someone out of something they didn't reason themselves into. And so my question is, a lot of bigotry is based on religion. Religion is impervious to reason. So how do we go about conversing with someone who says, well, my religion teaches me that women are inferior, or blacks are inferior, or gay people are perverts?
Well, I think that the church, and when I say church, I don't mean a specific church. I mean the religious institution. I think they have a large responsibility, as well as schools. Where do we learn? Where do we get most of our information from? There are three sources: our parents, our church, if we go to a church, and our schools, our academic systems. And oftentimes, these topics are taboo. Our parents may tell us that at a young age or whatever, you shouldn't play with those kids who live on that side of the tracks or whatever. But when we go to, each religion, whether you're Jewish, you're Catholic, you're Protestant, you're Mormon, you're whatever, there is some form of Sunday school. And in Sunday school, as little kids, 3 and 4 years old and whatever else, we'll go down in the basement of this building on Sunday mornings, and we are taught our Sunday school lessons. And in Sunday school, we learn that God made a rainbow of different colors that represent us. And we are all God's children, and we love each other all the same, and God loves us all the same. This is what we're taught in Sunday school. But then what happens? As we reach puberty and adolescence or whatever, we get kicked out of Sunday school upstairs to the larger congregation. And now we're sitting in the big room with our parents and all the adults. And if you're Catholic, the priest; if you're Jewish, the rabbi; if you're a Protestant, the minister or the reverend, the pastor, whatever, the clergy. The clergy stops teaching the Sunday school lesson. What happened? All right. Because people are only going to pay money for what they want to hear. I used to be a deacon in my church. And so I would be the one walking through the congregation with the collection plate. All right. People are only going to put money in that plate if the sermon is what they want to hear. As Christians, we're supposed to give 10% of our tithes and offerings to the church. If they're not hearing what they want to hear, they're not putting money in that plate. I can tell you that. All right. So what would happen? I'm not saying all churches or all religious institutions, but some of them. What would happen if the clergy were to say, hey, you know what? It's okay if all you Jewish people go out there and marry Gentiles, or all you white people go out there and marry black people. Half the congregation is going to get up and walk out. Or they're going to fire that clergy, because that's not what they want to hear. One thing's for sure, they're not going to be putting money into that collection plate. Because that Sunday school lesson is no longer valid when you become an adult. And that's a problem. It's all about the money. So at that point, they are putting money above morality. Why don't they teach that same thing downstairs in the Sunday school class? Because those Sunday school kids don't have any money. 3 and 4-year-olds don't have any money to put in the collection plate. So you teach them the right thing. But then when they go upstairs, that's where the money is. So you say what's going to bring that church or that institution money. All right. In this country, we have Black Baptist churches and we have white Baptist churches. Why do we have those? We read the same King James Bible. We worship the same God and the same Jesus Christ. Why do we have 2 different Baptist churches? I'm just using them as an example. There are others also, Methodists and so forth and so on. Because back in the day, Black Baptists couldn't go to the white Baptist church. They had to go to their own church. They weren't welcome in the white Baptist church. Now, some of them, are intermingled and stuff. But then there's a fine line there. Because, a Black Baptist can go to a white Baptist and say, hey, do you accept me as your brother in Christ? And the guy's gonna say, yeah, of course I do, and hug the guy. And then the black guy says to the white Baptist, well, would you accept me as your brother-in-law? Oh, you might struggle with that one. So this is the problem, because that Sunday school lesson is no longer valid upstairs. We have to get back to that and get the clergy to teach. The clergy knows right from wrong, and this would be a case of willful ignorance, where the clergy knows we all are God's children. We all are equal, but the clergy is enriching the church by not putting that out there. You know, there was a Klansman, his name was Johnny Lee Clary, C-L-A-R-Y, look him up. Johnny Lee Clary. He was a vehement racist and anti-Semite, very, very violent Klansman, did a lot of damage and destruction. Well, he finally saw the light and he renounced that ideology, and he became an ordained minister and apologized for his transgressions and brought everybody together to his churches, blacks, whites, Jews, everybody together. And he would tell people to their face, you know, you can't be out here committing all kinds of nonsense in the streets and then come to a church on Sunday and atone for it, just to go back out on Monday and start it all over again, Monday through Saturday. And he had a saying. He said, you can't be a Sunday saint and a Monday ain't. And that's the truth. And see, this is what the clergy needs to do. So I hold the clergy, I hold academic institutions, schools accountable, because, you know, these conversations have been taboo for so long. This problem of racism should have been addressed a long time ago. Here we are in the 21st century. We've already been to the moon, all right? How is it that we as Americans, and don't get me wrong, I love my country. I'm a patriot. I love my country. But it bothers me when we say, you know, we're the greatest nation on the face of this earth. Perhaps we are the greatest nation on the face of this earth technologically. So now we're gonna go a little Carl Sagan here, okay? With astronomy and stuff. We are the greatest nation on the face of this earth technologically, right? We Americans invented the technology to put a man on the moon, all right? And while Neil Armstrong was up there walking around on the moon, talking about one small step for a man and one giant leap for mankind, we invented the technology. We Americans invented the technology to talk to him live, all the way from Earth, all the way to the moon via satellite radio phone. We invented that technology. Everybody out there right now watching this program, everybody has a cell phone. You can talk to people right next door, talk to people halfway around the world. We invented that technology. Everybody out there has email. Hit a few words, hit a few numbers, hit send. You're communicating with people anywhere on the face of this earth. How is it that we Americans can talk to people as far away as the moon or anywhere on the face of this earth, but yet we have difficulty talking to the person who lives right next door to our house, simply because they are a different color, a different religion, a different persuasion, a different whatever? It seems to me that before we can call ourselves the greatest nation on the face of this earth, our ideology needs to catch up to our technology. Folks, we are living in the 21st century. We are living in space age times. So why are we still thinking with Stone Age minds?
Thank you for that. I think I'm trying to see who's asked a question a while ago. Andy, I saw you asked a question in the chat.
Sure, I'll ask it verbally if that's all right. Daryl, you can hear me?
Sure, Andy.
Yeah. So what one policy recommendation would you make to the incoming administration in Washington to address the division and rancor that's that's threatening our country right now? What can we do collectively, at the level of policy, to bring the nation back together?
You know what I would do? I would do the same thing that we do externally. Let's do it internally. Anytime this country, our great country, hears about civil unrest in another country, whether it's within that country, two different factions, or between two opposite countries getting ready to have some kind of war, we always try to intercede. And we try to get these two enemies to come to a table. We try to arrange a summit and bring these two opposing forces to come to the table, and we try to moderate this and try to draw up some kind of ceasefire or peace accord or whatever. We're always interceding on the behalf of a foreign country or foreign countries that are about to attack one another. Why don't we try that same thing right here in our own country? Why don't we invite the people that we consider are causing civil unrest, etc.? Bring them to the table. Let's find out what it is they fear. Because their fears may be steeped in ignorance, which we can cure. We have the education, we have the exposure to mitigate those fears. But see, we sweep all that stuff under the table and we're in denial of it until something explodes. So instead of being reactive, let's start being proactive.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Davis. Next, how about Omasan? Do you want to go next?
Sorry, I have a question to ask. This is speaking as someone who is from Africa, who observes America.
What country in Africa?
Am I concerned about?
Pardon?
I'm from Nigeria. I live in England. I'm part English, but
I'm
from Nigeria. I live.
I was saying.
Yeah, my own concern about America. Sorry, you speak. You keep speaking.
I was saying that I visited Nigeria many years ago to Lagos.
Yes. I live in Lagos also. I'm in England at Fame. But basically, my own question is, America's issues are very structural. Segregation has almost become embedded in society there in America compared to other places with had racism and that kind of thing. Do you truly believe America can become a truly post-racial society with all the structures and everything? Because even in all of American society, for example, for every kind of issue, there's a kind of Black response to it. For example, if people in the university pretend to let you and you serve your fraternity, if a site doesn't let you, there's principle. Can American society become truly integrated and Black people become part of the whole? Or is that ever possible in that kind of way? Or is it just separate societies really humming together? Is it like basically two societies passing each other? Because they're my own view of America is there are many Americas. It's a very big country, but can Black and white truly become integrated? Because we can talk about churches. Sunday, as Barack Obama said, is the most segregated part of American society. Everyone goes to church.
That was Martin Luther King who said that. But,
but I think Barack Obama quoted that. But the same kind of issue is, can America become truly integrated in the kind of way that really creates a post-racial society?
The answer to your question, I believe, is yes, absolutely. If I didn't have any hope, I wouldn't be putting my life on the line and working towards that very end goal. I truly believe it can be, because I've seen it. I lived in societies where we all got along. I grew up in societies where we all got along overseas. So as a young child, I was living 10 years in the future as a kid, being in these schools in the 1960s with kids from all around the world in my class. That scenario had yet to come to my country until 10 years later. So I was already living it. I was already living in the future. We talk about over here, we went from black and white TV to color TV. Well, when I was overseas as a child, I went from color classrooms to black and white classrooms. It was like in the reverse. So I knew in advance that, yes, this can work. It can definitely work. But what we have to do is change the perspectives and come together and stop putting taboos on these conversations. And that's why I'm so grateful for you all to have these conversations. Because, you know, some years ago, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. It was taboo. People did not want to discuss race. So that's why I'm grateful. So yes, we can see changes. We're seeing them right now. Yet, you know, they're coming slowly. We've come a long ways, but yes, we still have a long ways to go. But yes, I do believe the answer to your question is absolutely, it can happen. And it will happen one day.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And I think we will have one final question.
Okay.
So this is from Kieran, who posted in the chat, but I'll let them say it out loud if they want.
Hello, Mr. Daryl, Mr. Davis, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
This has been very eye-opening. This has been a great experience talking to you and listening to you. I wanted to tell you, you opened my mind when you said so many things happened because of George Floyd's death. I never realized that, yet you showed us, like, see how much great change has come to the society because of that. And my question is, whenever we sit down to talk with people who don't agree with us, or who have different perspectives, or who have different views, I always get emotionally involved or personally involved, you know, and it's hard for me not to put emotions into that. How do we train ourselves, or how do we, or what are the things out there that you can tell us, or maybe how did you come here to this point where you can take out the emotion before you talk to that other person?
Yes, what you should do is this. Before you engage in those kinds of conversations, spend a lot of time learning as much as you can about that person's position, whether it's a racial position or a position on abortion or on, you know, global warming or whatever you know, your adversarial conversation is going to be about. Learn as much as you can about how they feel, how they think. So that way you know what to expect and you know who you are. They cannot define you. Only you can define yourself. All right? Now, but you know, be open-minded. You know, if they say something that, you know, that goes against what you believe, but they show you evidence, be open-minded to say, hey, you know, I need to maybe take a look at this and look at this from another perspective. Because, you know, you have something to learn from them, they have something to learn from you. So be open-minded, but learn their position and find the facts that reinforce your position. And always go into these conversations, not debates, conversations prepared that way. And I want to touch on one more thing before we go. You know, a lot of this divide that we're seeing in our country today, in terms of race, is this. This country was built on a two-tier society: white supremacy and slavery. And as we progress through the years, we progress like this. Maybe like this, but never like this. All right? And as I said, when I was a child, Black people in this country were 12%. Native Americans, just under 1%. Hispanic people, Latino people approaching 2%. Asians, between 3 and 4%. Today, we Black people remain at 12%, almost 13%. Asians are like at 6%. Native Americans remain at 1%. And Latino, Hispanic people have grown from 2% up to 17, almost 18%. And at the time when I was a kid, whites were like 84, 86% here. So if you take today, just 12% Black people plus 17% Hispanic, that's 29% right there, non-white. This is happening, all right? And here is what the white supremacists in this country fear. They know, as we all know, if you look at it and follow it, by 2042, which is only 22 years from now, this country will be 50-50. 50% white, 50% non-white. Non-white meaning Black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever else, okay? in 2042, that's going to be this country, for the first time in the history of the United States. And between 2045 and 2050, white people will become a minority in this country. And that is driving that side crazy. All right. What I hear from people in the Klan and the alt-right and the neo-Nazis, Daryl, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. They call it the browning of America. And that's why they're so anti-immigrant. But when they say anti-immigrant, they're not talking about people from Canada or people from the UK or Eastern Europe. They're talking about people from West Africa, Mexico, South America, things like that. You know, they want a pure white country. And this is happening. So they call it the browning of America or white genocide through miscegenation. And this is why we're seeing a lot of these groups, new groups pop up, and they're trying to recruit and bring people in saying, hey, you know, come join us. We're going to take our country back. We're going to make America great again. We're going to build that wall. We're going to, you know, do all these kinds of things out of fear, out of the landscape. The landscape is changing color. It's not as white as it used to be. And while there are plenty of white people who embrace this and say, hey, you know, this is what happens, no big deal. You know, I welcome it, no big deal. There is a contingency that is freaking out about it. And they're going and joining these groups and they're recruiting and all that kind of stuff. And when those groups don't do what they say they're going to do, they don't take the country back or whatever, people get frustrated. And they say, you know what? If the Klan can't do it or the neo-Nazis can't do it, I'll do it myself. And that's when they go out and walk in by themselves and walk into a black church and boom, 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 or into the Tree of Life Synagogue up there in your state, Pennsylvania, boom, 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 right? Or into the Walmart in El Paso, Texas, boom, 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 all right? These people are called lone wolves. And while we have intelligence agencies that have operatives that can infiltrate these groups, just like we had intelligence operatives who infiltrated that militia that was going to kidnap and murder the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, all right? We have operatives that can infiltrate and gather intelligence into these groups and foil some of these plots. However, you cannot infiltrate a lone wolf. That's only one person. How do you get inside one person? So unfortunately, we're going to see more and more of these lone wolves as we approach 2042. This is why we need to address the situation now. Let's be proactive, let's not be reactive. In fact, you all just saw a lone wolf about a month ago when that 17-year-old boy came from Illinois, my home state, into Wisconsin with his gun and shot 3 protesters. He killed 2 and shot a 3rd guy in the arm. And then he went back home. That was a lone wolf, 17 years old, because he thinks he's a patriot trying to save this country. And so these people are becoming unhinged. This is why it's important not to ignore them, not to blow them off, not to insult them, but bring them to the table and educate them. Show them what is true, what is real. Address their concerns. All right? Like I said, as we approach 2042, we're going to see more and more of those people. They are becoming unhinged. Those of you who are old enough out there will remember 1999. And in 1999, everybody was freaking out about the year 2000. You know, Y2K, the world is going to come to an end. My VCR will stop working. You know, the bank is not going to work anymore. I got to get my money out of the bank and hide it under my bed because, you know, the world's going to crash. Well, 2042 is the white supremacist Y2K. There's a lot of angst out there about that. So we need to lower the temperature. We need to bring people to the table, have these conversations, and move forward together in the collective voice that makes us the United States of America, not the Confederate States of America.
Thank you so much, Davis.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Davis. I'd love to have more of this conversation, but I have to be cognizant of time. People, you know, have other things they need to do. So I think
Sure.
now's a good time to wrap things up. I wanted to thank you one more time, And I also wanted to tell people, if you're interested in having, if the point of the Humanist League is around having, learning to have difficult conversations with this, first maybe with people who choose to, and then you can maybe use these skills and what Mr. Davis has described in order to use that, in order to talk to people who you disagree with more vehemently. So if you're interested in those sort of discussions, you can join our discussion meetings. I've put the link to hear about them in the chat. And I wanted to thank everybody, our attendees, our speaker, and everybody else who made this event possible. So thank you all.
Thank you all, and good night. Thank you very, very much.
And many thanks, Daryl. Take care, everyone. It was really great to see you turn out for this.
Yeah, thanks everybody again.
Hey, Isaac.
Right, yes.
Good to see you, man. Sorry, I wanted to reach out. This is an amazing discussion.